The sun was setting over the Viridian 7 colony when Taman finished his last equipment check. He wiped the sweat from his forehead and looked at the cooling towers behind him. Another long day at the geothermal power station was done. His muscles ached, but he smiled, thinking about his daughter waiting at home. Taman was 34 years old and worked as the chief maintenance engineer for the colony. Life wasn't easy for him. 3 years ago, his wife Hyejin died from colonial fever. Since then, he raised their daughter Nari alone. She was 6 years old now, full of energy and questions. Every day was a challenge, but Taman wouldn't trade it for anything. He packed his tools into his worn backpack and started walking back to the colony. The path took him through the volcanic ridge, a rough area filled with black rocks and old lava flows. Most workers took the shuttle back, but Taman liked walking. It gave him time to think and saved a bit of money. Halfway through the ridge, something caught his eye. A strange metal object stuck out from between two large rocks. It looked wrong, too smooth and shiny to be natural. Taman's curiosity pulled him closer. As an engineer, he couldn't ignore unusual things. When he climbed over the rocks, his breath caught in his throat. An escape pod was crashed into the cooled lava. The metal was torn and burned. Smoke still rose from some of the cracks. This was a recent crash, maybe just hours old. Taman's heart raced. He should call colony security right away. That was the protocol for any alien contact. But something made him hesitate. Through the cracked window of the pod, he saw movement. He rushed forward and pulled at the damaged door. The metal groaned and finally gave way. Inside, curled up and barely breathing, was a young girl. But she wasn't human. Her skin was covered in beautiful silver-blue scales. 2 broken wings lay twisted behind her. Blood, darker than human blood, pooled beneath her. She was Dragonkin. Taman had seen pictures in colony briefings, but never in person. The Dragonkin were powerful, dangerous, and kept to themselves. They ruled vast parts of space and didn't care much for other species. Finding one here, injured and alone, was almost impossible. The girl's eyes opened slightly. They were golden and filled with pain. She tried to speak, but only a weak sound came out. She was young, maybe 16 in human years. Just a child, really. Taman made a decision. He couldn't leave her here to die. It didn't matter what species she was. She needed help. He took off his jacket and carefully wrapped it around her damaged wings. The girl whimpered in pain but was too weak to resist. Taman found some metal poles from the wreckage and used his shirt to create a makeshift stretcher. Every movement was gentle, like when he carried Nari after she fell asleep watching movies. Getting her out of the pod was hard work. She was taller than a human girl her age and heavier because of her scales. Sweat poured down Taman's face as he slowly dragged the stretcher across the rocky ground. His back screamed in protest, but he didn't stop. The sun had fully set by the time he reached his workshop. It was a small building attached to his home, filled with tools and spare parts. Taman rarely used it anymore, not since Hyejin died and he had to spend more time with Nari. But now it would become a hospital. He carried the Dragonkin girl inside and laid her on his old workbench, which he quickly covered with clean blankets. Her breathing was shallow and her scales had lost their shine. Burns covered her arms and legs. Her wings were the worst part. The delicate membrane was torn in several places, and the bones looked broken. Taman stood back and ran his hands through his hair. What was he doing? He wasn't a doctor. He was just an engineer who fixed machines. But he couldn't watch someone die, even if helping her might get him in serious trouble. He heard the door to his house open. Small footsteps ran toward the workshop. "Daddy!" "You're late." "I was worried." Nari's voice called out before she appeared in the doorway. She stopped suddenly, her eyes going wide. "Daddy, what is that?" Taman quickly moved to block her view. "Nari, sweetie, go back inside." But Nari was too curious. She peeked around his legs and gasped. "Is that a dragon? A real dragon lady?" She stepped closer, her fear turning to wonder. "She's so pretty. But Daddy, she's hurt." "Yes, she is. That's why you need to go inside while I help her." Nari shook her head firmly, her pigtails swinging. "No, we have to help her together. Remember what you always say? We help people who need help." Taman wanted to argue, but Nari was right. Those were his words. He sighed and nodded. "Okay, but you have to do exactly what I say. And you can't tell anyone about this. Not your friends, not your teacher, nobody. Can you promise?" Nari nodded seriously. "I promise, Daddy. Cross my heart." For the next several hours, Taman worked on treating the Dragonkin girl's injuries. He used his engineering knowledge to build a makeshift medical scanner from spare electronics. The colony medical database had basic information about Dragonkin biology. It wasn't much, but it was something. Nari helped by handing him tools and holding lights. She talked softly to the unconscious girl, telling her everything would be okay. Her gentle voice filled the quiet workshop. Taman cleaned the wounds carefully and wrapped them with medical supplies from his home first aid kit. He used industrial sealant, the kind meant for fixing coolant leaks, to carefully bind the broken wing bones. It wasn't proper medical treatment, but it would have to do. What Taman didn't know was that high above the planet, hidden behind advanced cloaking technology, 3 massive warships floated in orbit. Inside the largest ship on a command throne that overlooked hundreds of crew members sat matriarch Velrin. She was enormous, even for Dragonkin. Her scales were deep crimson, marked with gold patterns that showed her royal bloodline. Her wings, when fully spread, could block out the sun. She had ruled the Third Fleet for 200 years and conquered 17 worlds. Entire species feared her name. But now the most powerful being in this part of space sat perfectly still, watching a small screen. Her golden eyes tracked every movement of the human below. Her claws dug into the armrests of her throne. The girl on that workbench was Eris, her youngest daughter. The child had stolen a scout ship 3 days ago to prove she was brave enough to be a warrior. Velrin had been tracking her, ready to let her learn a small lesson before bringing her home. Then the engine failure happened. The crash, her daughter lying broken on an alien world. Velrin had been ready to burn the entire colony to ash if any creature touched her child with ill intent. Her finger had hovered over the weapons control, ready to turn the planet's surface to glass. But then she watched this human carefully lift Eris from the wreckage. Watched him create a stretcher with his own clothes. Watched him struggle across rough ground, his face twisted in effort but his hands always gentle. Now she watched him clean wounds with steady hands. Watched a small human child hold her daughter's hand and whisper kind words. Velrin didn't understand. In her long life, she had seen many species. Most ran from Dragonkin. Others attacked out of fear or greed. None had ever helped. Matriarch, her second-in-command, spoke quietly. "Should we retrieve the princess?" Velrin was silent for a long moment, her eyes never leaving the screen. Finally, she spoke. "No, not yet. I want to see what this human does next." Below, in his small workshop, Taman finally stepped back from his work. The Dragonkin girl was bandaged and stable. Her breathing was stronger now. He had done everything he could. Nari yawned widely, fighting to keep her eyes open. "Is she going to be okay, Daddy?" Taman picked up his daughter and held her close. "I hope so, sweetie. I really hope so." He didn't know that his simple act of kindness was being watched by the most dangerous being in the galaxy. He didn't know that his decision to help would change everything. He just knew that he couldn't let someone die when he had the power to help. That was enough. 3 days had passed since Taman brought the Dragonkin girl to his workshop. Each day was harder than the last. He barely slept, checking on her every few hours during the night. During the day, he had to go to work and pretend everything was normal. His supervisor, Daehyun, was starting to ask questions. "You look terrible, Taman. Are you sick? Is Nari okay?" "Just some trouble sleeping," Taman lied, forcing a smile. "I'll be fine," but he wasn't fine. The supplies he kept at home were running out. The girl's wounds were healing, but slower than he hoped. Her wings were the biggest problem. Even with his makeshift splints, he worried they might never work properly again. Real medical equipment could save them, but that meant going to the colony medical center. And that meant questions he couldn't answer. After his shift ended, Taman rushed home. Inside the workshop, he found Nari sitting next to the workbench, reading aloud from one of her picture books. The Dragonkin girl's eyes were still closed, but her breathing was steady and strong. "Hi, Daddy," Nari whispered. "I've been reading her the story about the space rabbit." "Do you think she can hear me?" "Maybe," Taman said softly, stroking his daughter's hair. "Even if she can't, I think it's nice that you're trying." He checked the girl's bandages and gave her water through a small tube. Her body was accepting the fluids now, which was good, but she needed to wake up soon. He was running out of ideas for treatment. That night, Taman sat at his computer, searching through every medical database the colony network had access to. There wasn't much information about Dragonkin biology. They kept to themselves and didn't share their medical knowledge. Most of what humans knew came from old observations and rumors. He was reading about dragonkin bone structure when he heard a sound from the workshop. A low groan followed by movement. Taman jumped up and ran to the door. The dragonkin girl was awake. Her golden eyes were open and filled with panic. She tried to sit up, but pain shot through her body and she fell back. Her hands went to her wings, feeling the bandages and splints. A sound came from her throat, something between a cry and a growl. Hey, it's okay, Taman said gently, holding his hands up to show he meant no harm. You're safe. You were hurt, but you're going to be okay. The girl's head snapped toward him. Her eyes narrowed and her lips pulled back, showing sharp teeth. She tried to speak, but the words came out in a language Taman didn't understand. It sounded like wind and thunder mixed together. I don't understand, Taman said slowly. Do you speak human common? The girl stared at him for a long moment. Then in a rough, unused voice, she spoke. Where am I? What did you do to me? You crashed. I found you in the volcanic ridge 3 days ago. I brought you here and tried to help your injuries. Help? The word came out like an accusation. She looked around the workshop at the tools and machines. What is this place? A prison, a laboratory? Her voice grew stronger, filled with fear and anger. Did you take samples from me? Am I being sold? Taman was confused. What? No. This is my workshop. You were dying, so I brought you here to treat your wounds. Why? The girl demanded. Why would a human help me? What do you want in return? The question made Taman sad. I don't want anything. You needed help, so I helped. That's all. The girl laughed, but it was a bitter sound. Lies, everyone wants something. Your kind especially. You humans are weak and greedy. You must want to use me somehow. Before Taman could respond, Nari appeared in the doorway, rubbing her eyes sleepily. Daddy, I heard voices. Is the dragon lady awake? The dragonkin girl's eyes locked onto Nari. Her whole body tensed, ready to defend herself despite her injuries. Nari walked right up to the workbench, completely unafraid. Hi, my name is Nari. You've been sleeping for 3 whole days. Are you feeling better? Does it hurt? Daddy worked really hard to fix you. The girl stared at the small human child, confusion replacing her anger. You let your offspring near me? Are you insane? I could kill her. But you won't, Taman said calmly. Will you? The girl opened her mouth to respond, then closed it again. She looked at Nari's bright, curious face, at the picture book still lying on the chair, at the small cup with a straw that Nari had used to give her water while she slept, though she didn't remember. I don't understand, the girl said quietly. Nothing about this makes sense. Over the next few days, the girl slowly accepted that she wasn't in danger. Her name was Eris, and she was the youngest daughter of someone very important, though she wouldn't say who. She had taken a ship without permission to prove herself, and then everything went wrong. Nari visited the workshop every day after school. She brought her toys, her books, and her endless cheerful energy. At first, Eris didn't know what to do with the attention. Dragonkin children were raised to be strong and independent. They didn't play games or read silly stories, but Nari didn't care about any of that. She just wanted to be friends. This is Mr. Hoppy, Nari said, holding up a stuffed rabbit with one ear. He's been with me since I was a baby. You can hold him if you want. He makes me feel better when I'm sad. Eris took the toy carefully, her clawed hands gentle despite their sharpness. The rabbit was worn and soft from years of hugs. Something about it made her chest feel strange. Your father, Eris said one evening when Taman was changing her bandages. He is your only parent? Yes, Nari answered. My mama died when I was little. I don't remember her much, but Daddy takes care of me really good. One parent raising offspring alone? Eris looked surprised. That is unusual. In my culture, young are raised by the entire clan, but parents often have little direct contact with their children. It makes us strong. Does it make you happy? Nari asked simply. The question seemed to break something in Eris. Her eyes became wet, though she tried to hide it. I don't know. Taman worked quietly, listening to them talk. He learned that dragonkin saw most other species as either threats or tools. They conquered worlds and took what they wanted. Kindness was seen as weakness. Helping someone outside your clan was considered foolish, but that's so sad, Nari said. Don't you want friends? People who care about you just because? Just because? Eris repeated the words like they were foreign, Nothing is just because. Everything has a reason, a purpose, a cost. Not with humans, Taman finally spoke. We help each other. We form communities. We care for people we aren't related to. After my wife died, the whole colony helped me raise Nari. Our neighbor Jiwoo brought us food every day for months. She didn't want anything back. She just knew we needed help. Eris was quiet for a long time. Your species is very strange. Maybe, Taman smiled. But we survive, we grow. We're still here after thousands of years of wars and disasters. You know why? Because we look after each other. That's what makes us human. High above the planet, Velrin continued her vigil. She had watched every moment of the past week. Her command crew was confused by her orders to simply wait and observe, but none dared question her. She watched the small human child share her food with Eris. Watched her read stories and sing songs. Watched her teach Eris a clapping game that made her daughter laugh for the first time in years. She watched the human male work long hours at his job, then come home and tend to Eris's wounds with patient, careful hands. He asked for nothing, expected nothing. He simply gave. Velrin had studied dozens of species in her lifetime. She understood their weaknesses and how to exploit them. But this was completely outside her understanding. Matriarch, her second-in-command said carefully, the princess's wounds are healing. Should we retrieve her now? Velrin's claws drummed on her throne. Part of her wanted to take Eris home immediately, but another part, a part she didn't quite understand, wanted to see what would happen next. Her daughter was changing. Growing softer, yes, but also happier. Not yet, Velrin said, but prepare a security team and monitor all colony communications. If anyone discovers Eris's identity, I want to know immediately. In the workshop, Taman was running out of medical supplies. Eris's wings needed specialized treatment that he couldn't provide. Her scales were healing, but some of the burn scars would be permanent without proper xenobiology medications. He sat at his computer late at night trying to figure out what to do. Going to the colony medical center was too risky, but without better treatment, Eris might never fly again. Behind him, the door opened quietly. Eris stood there leaning on a crutch he had made from pipe. She was wearing one of his old shirts modified to fit around her wings. You should be resting, Taman said. I needed to ask you something, Eris said. She sat down carefully in the other chair. Why are you doing this? And don't say just because. I need to understand. In my world, everything has a price. What is yours? Taman turned to face her. He thought about his answer carefully. 3 years ago, my wife died, he said quietly. I was lost, broken. I had a 6-year-old daughter who needed me, but I could barely get out of bed. The grief was eating me alive. He paused, remembering those dark days. Then my neighbors started showing up, bringing food, watching Nari when I couldn't, fixing things around the house. They didn't ask for payment. They just helped. Why? Eris asked. Because that's what communities do. We take care of each other. One day I asked my neighbor Jiwoo the same question you're asking me. She said something I'll never forget. Taman smiled at the memory. She said, Today 2 weeks had passed since Taman found Eris. She could walk now without the crutch, though her wings still couldn't fold properly. The burns on her scales had faded to silvery scars. She spent her days in the workshop, learning about human tools and machines while Nari was at school. Taman had managed to keep everything secret so far. He told his supervisor he was working on a personal project at night, which explained his tiredness. The colony was small and people minded their own business mostly. As long as nothing went wrong, he might actually pull this off. But something was about to go very wrong. In space, far from Velrin's fleet, another dragonkin ship moved silently through the dark. It was a hunter vessel, sleek and dangerous. Inside, a warrior named Vector studied his scanners with growing excitement. Vector belonged to a rival clan, one that had fought Velrin's family for centuries. They weren't at war right now, but the old hatred remained. He had been tracking unusual energy signatures in this sector when he detected something impossible. A dragonkin life sign on the human colony world below. It took him 2 days to confirm it, but there was no doubt. A young dragonkin female was on that planet. The signature patterns matched royal bloodlines. This was someone important. Vector smiled, showing all his teeth. This was an opportunity too good to ignore. If he could capture this female, he could ransom her back to her family for a fortune, or better yet, use her as leverage in political games. Either way, his clan would reward him greatly. He gathered his strike team of 4 warriors. They were all experienced soldiers skilled in quick raids. They would go down at night, grab the dragonkin female, and be off planet before anyone knew what happened. What about the humans? One of his warriors asked. Kill anyone who gets in the way, Vector said simply. They're just humans. Weak and fragile. They won't even know what hit them. That night, Taman was working late in his workshop. Eris was helping him repair a water filtration unit that he had brought home from work. She had quick hands and was learning fast. This piece connects here? She asked, holding up a valve. Yes, good. You're getting better at this. Taman smiled. It was nice having someone to work with, even if she was supposed to be recovering. Nari was already asleep in her room. The house was quiet except for the soft sounds of tools and mechanical parts. Then every light in the workshop went out. Taman froze. Power failure? But that didn't make sense. The backup generators should have kicked in immediately. Eris stood up, her body tense. Something's wrong. I smell... Her eyes widened in terror. My people. They're here. Before Taman could ask what she meant, the workshop door exploded inward. 3 massive figures entered, their scales gleaming in the moonlight. They were bigger than Eris, covered in armor and carrying weapons that hummed with power. There you are, little royal, Vector said, stepping through the doorway. He was the largest, with black scales and red markings. You've been very hard to find. Your family must be worried sick. His smile was cruel. They'll pay well to get you back. Eris stepped backward, bumping into the workbench. You're Vector's clan. The traitors. Traitors? Vector laughed. We're survivors. And you, little princess, are our ticket to power. He looked at Taman like he was an insect. Step aside, human. This doesn't concern you. Taman's mind raced. These were dragonkin warriors, and he was just an engineer. He had no weapons, no training. Fighting them would be suicide. The smart thing would be to step aside and hope they left quickly. But behind him, he heard a small sound. Nari's door opening, Daddy, her sleepy voice called out. What was that noise? Everything else stopped mattering. His daughter was in danger. That was all Taman needed to know. He grabbed a plasma cutter from his workbench and ignited it. The bright blue flame lit up his face. You're not taking her, and you're not touching my daughter. Vector looked genuinely surprised. Then he laughed, a deep booming sound. A human challenging me? With a tool? This is the funniest thing I've seen in years, and Taman, no. Eris grabbed his arm. You can't fight them. They'll kill you! Get Nari and hide in the vent system, Taman said quietly, not taking his eyes off the warriors. You remember the path I showed you? Get to the colony security station. I won't leave you. Yes, you will. Taman pushed her toward the house door. Go, now. One of the warriors moved to grab Eris, but Taman stepped between them. He swung the plasma cutter in a wide arc. The warrior jumped back, more from surprise than fear. The other humans he'd encountered had all run or begged. None had fought back. Nari, Taman shouted. Vent now! He heard his daughter's footsteps running, then the sound of a metal grate being removed. Good. She remembered the emergency plan he had taught her. The ventilation system connected to the main colony building. If she could reach it, she'd be safe. Vector's amusement faded. Enough games. Kill the human, quickly. 2 warriors charged at Taman. He was no fighter, but he knew his workshop like the back of his hand. He kicked a button on the floor and a heavy tool rack fell forward, blocking one warrior. The other got past, but Taman dove under a workbench and pulled a lever. Hydraulic pistons, the kind used to lift heavy equipment, shot upward. One caught the warrior in the chest and slammed him into the ceiling. The warrior crashed down, dazed but not seriously hurt. Taman knew he was only delaying the inevitable. These warriors were too strong, too fast. But every second he bought was a second for Nari and Eris to escape. A clawed hand grabbed his shoulder and threw him across the room. Taman hit the wall hard, feeling something crack. Pain exploded through his ribs. He fell to the ground, gasping. Vector walked toward him slowly. I'll give you credit, human. You're braver than I expected. But bravery without power is just stupidity. Taman tried to stand, but his legs wouldn't work right. Blood ran down his face from a cut on his forehead. Through blurry vision, he saw Vector raise his clawed hand. Then Eris stepped between them. Stop, she said, her voice shaking but determined. I'll go with you. Just don't hurt him. Eris, no, Taman coughed. Run. I can't let you die for me, Eris said. Tears ran down her scaled face. No one has ever... She couldn't finish the sentence. Vector grabbed Eris by the arm. Smart choice, little princess. Now we can do this the easy way. But before he could take a step, an alarm blared throughout the colony. Lights blazed on everywhere. Nari had reached the security station. Damn it, Vector snarled. He looked at his warriors. We're out of time. Grab the girl and go. One warrior picked up Eris like she weighed nothing. She struggled, but weakened from her injuries, she couldn't break free. Then the sky above them split open. Reality itself seemed to tear apart as three massive shapes materialized from nothing. Dragonkin warships, each one bigger than the entire colony, appeared in the air. Their weapons glowed with enough power to turn the planet to ash. From the largest ship, something dropped. It fell like a meteor, crashing into the ground outside the workshop with earth-shaking force. When the dust cleared, a figure stood in the crater. Velryn had come. She was magnificent and terrifying. Her crimson scales seemed to glow in the darkness. Her wings, fully spread, blocked out the stars. She was twice the size of Vector, and the power radiating from her made the air itself feel heavy. Release my daughter. Velryn's voice was quiet, but it carried the promise of death. Now, Vector's warrior immediately dropped Eris. All four of them fell to their knees, pressing their faces to the ground. In Dragonkin culture, this was absolute submission. Great matriarch, Vector said, his earlier confidence completely gone. We didn't know she was yours. You thought you could steal from me? Velryn walked forward, each step deliberate. You thought you could harm what is mine? Mercy, matriarch. We meant no disrespect to your house. Velryn's tail swept out faster than the eye could follow. It caught Vector across the face and sent him tumbling. You broke into sovereign territory. You attempted kidnapping. You assaulted civilians. She leaned down, her face inches from his. Give me one reason I shouldn't execute all of you right here. Vector had no answer. Then Eris spoke. Mother, wait. Velryn turned to her daughter. It was the first time Taemin understood who he had been helping. Not just any dragonkin. The daughter of the most powerful matriarch in this part of space. Eris limped over to where Taemin lay against the wall. She knelt beside him. He saved me. He asked for nothing. He gave everything. She looked up at her mother. This human showed me what honor really means. Velryn's eyes moved to Taemin for the first time. Really looked at him. She saw the plasma cutter still clutched in his hand. The blood covering his face. The way he tried to stand despite broken ribs. The fear in his eyes, not for himself, but looking toward the house where his daughter was hiding. You fought my kind to protect my daughter? Velryn asked. Taemin coughed, tasting blood. I fought to protect both our daughters. Something in Velryn's expression changed. She had expected many things when she came down to this planet. Anger, fear, negotiation. But this human, this fragile creature who should have been dead 3 times over, had fought 4 trained warriors to protect children, not for money, not for power, just because it was right. Colony security vehicles arrived, their lights flashing. Human officers poured out, weapons raised. They took one look at the colony medical center was busier than it had been in months. Taemin lay on a bed while Dr. Borum worked on his injuries. 3 broken ribs, a fractured wrist, severe bruising, and a concussion. He was lucky to be alive. You're an idiot, Borum said, but her voice was gentle. She had known Taemin since he arrived on the colony, fighting dragonkin warriors. What were you thinking? I was thinking about Nari, Taemin said. Every breath hurt, but the pain medication was starting to help. Nari sat on the edge of his bed, holding his hand carefully. She hadn't stopped crying since security found her in the ventilation system. I was so scared, Daddy. I thought they were going to hurt you. I'm okay, sweetie, see? Dr. Borum fixed me up. Outside the medical center, the colony was in chaos. 3 massive dragonkin warships still floated above them, visible to everyone. Matriarch Velryn stood in the center of the main plaza, surrounded by her guards. Colonists watched from windows and doorways, too afraid to approach. Governor Minho tried to manage the situation, but he was clearly out of his depth. Please, Matriarch, if you could just explain what your intentions are. My intentions are simple, Velryn said. I want to understand what happened here. I want to speak with the human who saved my daughter, and I want to know why. Eris stood next to her mother, still wearing Taemin's oversized shirt. Her wings were bandaged and splinted. She looked small next to Velryn's massive form. Mother, please. He's hurt because of me. You can't. I will do what must be done, Velrin said firmly. But her voice wasn't angry. It was confused, uncertain. Emotions she rarely felt. When Taman was finally cleared to leave the medical center, Velrin was waiting outside. The crowd parted before her like water, her golden eyes fixed on him as he limped out, Nari holding one hand and Eris supporting his other arm. Taman, Velrin said, we need to talk. Can it wait until morning? Taman asked tiredly. It's been a long night and Nari needs sleep. Several of Velrin's guards hissed at his casual tone. No one spoke to the matriarch like that. But Velrin raised a hand to silence them. No, it cannot wait. I have questions that need answers. She paused, then added something she rarely said. Please. They went to the colony council chamber, the largest room available. Velrin had to hunch to fit inside, her wings folded tight against her back. Her guards remained outside. Inside, it was just Velrin, Taman, Eris, Nari, Governor Minho, and a few colony officials who looked ready to run at any moment. Velrin paced back and forth, her tail swishing with agitation. Finally, she stopped and looked directly at Taman. I have been watching you for 2 weeks. Ever since you pulled my daughter from that wreckage. The room went silent. Taman felt his blood run cold. You've been watching? This whole time? Yes. I was ready to destroy this entire colony if anyone harmed Eris. My finger was on the weapons control, prepared to turn your buildings to ash. Velrin's voice was matter-of-fact, like she was discussing the weather. But then I watched you carry her to safety. Watched you spend your money, your time, your energy to save her. I didn't understand it. You were going to kill us all? Minho's voice cracked. The whole colony? If necessary, yes, Velrin said without apology. My daughter is worth more than 1,000 of your settlements. Taman felt anger cut through his exhaustion. She's a person. Out of possession to start wars over. The room gasped. No one talked to the matriarch like that. But Velrin didn't react with fury. Instead, she seemed almost curious. You keep saying things like that, Velrin said. You treat my daughter as an equal, as a friend. In my culture, such thinking doesn't exist. We have clan members and we have outsiders. There's nothing in between. Then your culture is missing something important, Taman said. He was too tired to be diplomatic. Eris is brave, smart, and kind. Those things matter more than what species she is or who her family is. Eris made a small sound like a suppressed sob. No one had ever described her that way before. Velrin sat down, the floor creaking under her weight. She studied Taman for a long moment. Tell me about your mate, the one who died. The question caught Taman off guard.
Yijin, why?
Because I need to understand you, and I think she is important to understanding why you do what you do. Taman was quiet for a moment, organizing his thoughts. Nari squeezed his hand. He took a breath and began. Hyjin was a botanist. She came to this colony to study native plants. I was just a junior engineer back then. We met when I had to repair the greenhouse climate control. He smiled at the memory. She was covered in dirt and yelling at me for taking too long. I fell in love with her right there. Love? Velrin interrupted. This is the human bonding emotion? Yes, we chose each other. Built a life together. Had Nari. His voice grew quieter. When the fever came, the colony didn't have the right medicine. She died in 3 days. I couldn't stop it. Couldn't fix it. I failed her. So you carry guilt, Velrin said. It wasn't a question. Every day, Taman admitted. But the colony helped me keep going. People brought food. Watched Nari when I couldn't get out of bed. They didn't give up on me, so I learned not to give up on myself. He looked at Velrin. That's why I helped Eris, because people helped me when I was broken. Because that's what you do for someone who needs it. Velrin stood and walked to the window. She looked out at her warships, then down at the small colony below. In my 300 years of life, I have conquered 17 worlds. I have led fleets into battle. I have negotiated treaties and crushed rebellions. I am feared across this entire sector. She turned back to face them. But I have never once done something simply because it was kind. Everything I do has purpose. Strategic value, political advantage. Her voice grew softer. And then I watched you. A weak human. No armies, no power, no advantages. Yet you risked everything for my daughter. Not for reward, not for recognition. Just because she needed help. That's not weakness, Taman said. That's strength. Real strength. The kind that builds civilizations instead of destroying them. I don't know if I believe that, Velrin said honestly, but I'm beginning to wonder if I've been wrong about many things. She looked at her daughter. Eris, tell me truthfully. Do you want to come home? Eris was clearly torn. Mother, These weeks here have been strange. Nari taught me games I never knew existed. Taman showed me that someone could care about me just for being me, not because I'm your daughter. I learned what it feels like to be part of a family. We are your family, Velrin said, but there was uncertainty in her voice. You're my clan, Eris corrected gently. It's not the same thing. In our culture, I'm valuable because of my bloodline. Here, I'm valuable just because I exist. Velrin was silent for a long time. Finally, she spoke to Governor Minho. I am placing this colony under my protection. Any threats to it will be considered threats to me personally. In exchange, I want to establish an embassy here. I want to learn more about your species. Minho looked like he might faint from relief. Of course, matriarch. We would be honored. Then Velrin did something unprecedented. She bent down on one knee in front of Taman, bringing her enormous head level with his. Taman, son of humans, you saved my daughter when you had every reason to ignore her. You fought warriors who could have killed you with a thought. You treated Eris with more honor than most of my own kind have shown her. She reached out and placed one massive claw gently on his shoulder. By the ancient laws of my people, I declare you and your offspring kin-adopted into my personal clan. You are under my protection. Your enemies are my enemies. Your family is my family. The room erupted in shocked whispers. Even Eris looked stunned. Mother, kin adoption is sacred. It's never been given to an outsider, never. Then it's time we change that, Velrin said. She looked at Taman. Do you accept? Taman looked at Nari, who was staring at the huge dragonkin with wide eyes. Then he looked at Eris, who was crying again. Finally, he looked back at Velrin. I don't fully understand what this means, Taman said honestly, but if it means Eris has a safe place to recover and Nari won't be in danger, then yes. I accept, Velrin stood. Then it is done. You are now clan. She looked at her guards outside. Spread the word across all dragonkin territories. This colony and these humans are untouchable. Anyone who harms them answers to me. As the meeting broke up, Eris pulled Taman aside. Her golden eyes were bright with tears. Do you understand what my mother just did? She challenged thousands of years of tradition. For you, because you showed basic kindness to me. I just did what was right, Taman said. That's what makes it so powerful, Eris replied. You didn't think about politics or consequences. You just saw someone who needed help and helped them. That's so simple. So obvious. But somehow my entire civilization never figured it out. Nari tugged on Taman's shirt. Daddy, does this mean Eris is like my sister now? And the big dragon lady is like our grandma? Taman couldn't help but laugh, even though it hurt his ribs. I guess it does, sweetie. Velrin overheard this. She looked down at Nari with an unreadable expression. Grandma, she repeated the word slowly. I have never been called that before. Do you like it? Nari asked innocently. Grandmas are supposed to be nice and give hugs and tell stories. I am a warrior queen, Velrin said. I do not give hugs. Nari looked disappointed. Eris nudged her mother. Try it. Just once. 3 months had passed since Velrin declared the colony under her protection. Life on Viridian 7 had changed in ways no one could have predicted. The Dragonkin embassy was built on the hillside overlooking the colony. It was a strange mix of Dragonkin architecture and human engineering, designed by Taman and constructed by both species working together. The building had high ceilings for Dragonkin but human-sized rooms as well. It was a symbol of cooperation. Taman stood in his workshop, which had been expanded and partially rebuilt after the attack. He was teaching a class of 5 young Dragonkin how to repair power distribution systems. They sat awkwardly on stools too small for them, their tails carefully positioned to avoid knocking things over. The key is to test each connection individually, Taman explained, demonstrating with a multimeter. If you skip steps, you'll miss the problem and have to start over. One of the students, a green-scaled youth named Wraith, raised his hand. Teacher Taman, why do humans make everything so complicated? We would just replace the entire system. Because replacement is wasteful, Taman said patiently. He'd had this conversation many times. These parts are expensive and take months to ship from Earth. We fix what we have and make it last. That sounds poor, another student said bluntly. It's called being resourceful. Eris said from the doorway. She walked in carrying a tray of drinks. Her wings had healed well over the months, though she still couldn't fly long distances. She had chosen to stay on the colony rather than return to the Dragonkin homeworld. I used to think like you. Now I understand that humans survive by being clever, not just strong. The students looked at Eris with respect. She was the matriarch's daughter, and her words carried weight. If she said human methods had value, they believed it. After the class ended, Eris helped Taman clean up. She had become his unofficial assistant, learning everything he could teach her about engineering and human culture. Mother is coming for dinner tonight, Eris said casually. She wants to try that pasta dish Nari loves. Taman nearly dropped the toolbox he was carrying. Again, that's 3 times this week? She's curious about human food, Eris said with a smile. And I think she likes spending time with Nari. Your daughter makes her laugh. It was true. Velrin had become a regular visitor to their home. At first, it was awkward having a 300-year-old Dragonkin matriarch sitting at their small dinner table. But Nari treated her like any other grandmother, chattering about school and showing off her drawings. Velrin seemed fascinated by the simplicity of it all. She would ask questions about human customs, family structures, and social bonds. She watched how Taman and Nari interacted with genuine interest, like a scientist studying a new species. That evening, Taman cooked his simple pasta with tomato sauce. Nothing fancy, just the comfort food Nari loved. Velrin arrived precisely on time, ducking through the door he'd had enlarged to accommodate her. Good evening, Grandma Velrin. Nari ran up and hugged the matriarch's leg. This was normal now. Good evening, small one, Velrin said. She had learned to modulate her voice around Nari, making it less intimidating. What did you learn in school today? As Nari launched into an excited story about her art project, Velrin settled into the reinforced chair Taman had built for her. She listened with her full attention, something that surprised her own diplomatic staff. The mighty matriarch, who barely had patience for council meetings, would listen to a 6-year-old talk about crayon drawings for hours. During dinner, Velrin carefully used the oversized utensils Taman had made for her. She still found human food strange, but she was trying. That meant something. The Colony Council is concerned, Velrin said between bites. They think more Dragonkin presence will cause problems. Are they wrong? Taman asked carefully. Probably not, Velrin admitted. My people are not known for peaceful cooperation. Many see this entire experiment as weakness, she paused. I've received challenges to my authority. 3 minor clans have called for a council trial. What does that mean? Taman asked, though he was afraid he knew the answer. It means they want to test whether I'm fit to lead. They say I've been corrupted by human influence, that I've forgotten what it means to be Dragonkin. Eris put down her fork, her face worried. Mother, a council trial is serious. If I lose, I'll be stripped of rank and exiled, Velrin said calmly. And this colony will lose its protection. The conservative factions will likely destroy it as an example. Nari stopped eating, her eyes going wide. They want to hurt us? Why? Velrin looked at the small human child. Because we're different. Because change scares them. Because they think strength only comes from domination, not cooperation. That's stupid, Nari said firmly. Despite the serious topic, Velrin smiled. Yes, it is. But stupid doesn't mean powerless. Taman felt cold fear in his stomach. When is this trial? 2 weeks. On the Dragonkin homeworld. Velrin met his eyes. I want you to come with me. Me? Why? Because you're the proof that I'm right, Velrin said. You and your daughter. You represent everything I'm trying to show my people. That other species aren't just resources or threats. That cooperation can make us all stronger. Mother, you can't bring humans to the homeworld, Eris protested. The council will see it as an insult. They'll see the truth, Velrin interrupted. Or they won't. Either way, I'm done hiding what I've learned. She looked at Taman. I'm not ordering you. This is dangerous and you have every right to refuse. But I'm asking, will you stand with me? Taman thought about his quiet life before all this started. He'd just wanted to work, raise his daughter, and get by. Now he was being asked to travel to an alien homeworld and participate in a political trial that could determine the fate of his entire colony. If we say no, Taman asked. Then I go alone and do my best, Velrin said. You won't be punished for refusing. You've already given more than anyone could ask. Taman looked at Nari, who was watching him with complete trust. She believed he would do the right thing, whatever that was. Then he looked at Eris, who had become like a daughter to him. She was scared for her mother. "I'm just an engineer," Taman said slowly. "I don't know anything about politics or speeches or convincing powerful people of anything." "I'm not asking for a politician," Velrin said. "I'm asking for exactly what you are. An honest person who does what's right," Taman sighed. "Then yes, we'll come." The next 2 weeks were chaos. Governor Minho tried to convince Taman not to go, worried about losing their only connection to the matriarch. Dr. Borum thought he was insane. His supervisor Daehyun just shook his head and gave him leave from work. "You've got more courage than sense," Daehyun said, "but that's always been your problem." Nari was excited about the trip, not fully understanding the danger. She thought of it as an adventure. Taman didn't have the heart to explain that they might not come back. Velrin insisted on bringing a delegation from the colony as well. Governor Minho reluctantly agreed to come, along with Dr. Borum and teacher Jiwoo. They would show different aspects of human society. The day before departure, Eris found Taman in his workshop. He was putting his tools away, organizing everything carefully. It might be the last time he touched them. "You don't have to do this," Eris said quietly. "You could stay here. Keep Nari safe. If your mother loses and the colony is destroyed, Nari won't be safe anywhere," Taman pointed out. "At least this way we have a chance to make a difference." "You've already made a difference," Eris said. "You changed me." "Changed my mother. That's more than most people do in their entire lives." "It's not enough," Taman said. "Not if it all falls apart now." Eris hugged him, careful of her wing splints. "Thank you. For everything. For saving me. For treating me like family. For showing me what kindness looks like." "You're welcome," Taman said, hugging her back. "But thank me after we survive this trial." The journey to the Dragonkin homeworld took 3 days on Velrin's flagship. The ship was massive, designed for conquest and war, but Velrin had prepared quarters for the human delegation that were comfortable and properly sized. Nari loved the ship. She ran through the corridors, making friends with confused Dragonkin crew members who had never seen a human child before. She taught them hand-clapping games and showed them her toy collection. By the second day, even the hardened warriors were smiling at her antics. "Your offspring is dangerously charming," Velrin told Taman, as they watched Nari teach 3 soldiers a song. "She makes everyone want to protect her." "That's just who she is," Taman said proudly. "She sees the good in everyone." "A useful skill," Velrin admitted, "though dangerous if she meets someone with no good to find." The Dragonkin homeworld was called Draconis, and it took Taman's breath away. The entire planet seemed to be made of mountains and crystal formations. Cities were carved into cliffsides and mountain peaks glittering in the light of 3 suns. Ships flew between structures like birds. "It's beautiful," Jiwoo whispered, her teacher's mind already thinking of how to describe this to her students. "It's intimidating," Minho corrected nervously. They landed at the capital, a massive city called Velkarth. The landing platform alone was bigger than their entire colony. Thousands of Dragonkin watched as Velrin's ship touched down. The air was thick with tension. "Remember," Velrin said to the human delegation. You of the council chamber fell silent as the trial formally began. Taman stood in the center with the other humans, feeling very small and very exposed. Thousands of Dragonkin eyes watched them from every direction. The weight of their stares was almost physical. Counselor Thane gestured with one massive claw. "Before we hear the matriarch's defense, the accusers will present their case." From the side entrance, a large Dragonkin walked forward. His scales were dark gray, marked with silver battle scars. Taman recognized him immediately from the briefings Velrin had given them. This was Warlord Krythos, leader of the conservative faction. Krythos was old, powerful, and completely opposed to any change in Dragonkin society. He represented everything traditional, everything focused on conquest and domination. "Honored Council," Krythos began, his voice carrying easily through the massive chamber. "I come before you with a heavy heart. We are witnessing the decline of our great civilization, and it begins at the top." He turned to point at Velrin. "Matriarch Velrin was once our finest warrior. She conquered worlds. She crushed rebellions. She made our enemies tremble." His voice grew harder. "But something changed. She has become weak, corrupted by exposure to inferior species." Murmurs of agreement rippled through parts of the crowd. Krythos activated a holographic display. Images appeared in the air above them. They showed Velrin eating human food at Taemin's table, laughing with Nari, standing guard while human children played. Her wings spread protectively over the colony during a storm. "Look at this," Kratos said with disgust. "The mighty matriarch reduced to babysitting humans, playing house with creatures who should be beneath our notice." He zoomed in on an image of Velrin helping Nari with her homework. "This is not leadership. This is embarrassment." More murmurs, louder this time. Taemin felt anger building in his chest, but he stayed quiet. Velrin had warned him to let the process play out. "She claims she has learned valuable lessons from these humans," Kratos continued. "But what lessons could a species that struggles to survive on a single colony possibly teach us? We control hundreds of worlds. We have power beyond their imagination. We are dragons, not nursemaids." The crowd was responding now, some calling out in agreement. Kratos had them worked up and he knew it. "But it gets worse," Kratos said. He brought up new images. These showed the Dragonkin students in Taemin's workshop, learning human engineering. "She has sent our youth to be taught by humans. Our children, learning from beings who can barely maintain their own equipment." He turned to face the council directly. "Matriarch Velrin has forgotten what it means to be Dragonkin. She has placed the comfort of aliens above the strength of our people. She has made us look weak to our enemies and foolish to our allies." Kratos paused for dramatic effect. "I move that she be stripped of rank and exiled. And I further move that the human colony be dissolved as a warning to others who might corrupt our leaders." The chamber erupted in shouts, both for and against. Councillor Thane had to bang his staff 3 times to restore order. "The accusation is noted," Thane said. "Matriarch Velrin, you may now present your defense." Velrin stepped forward. She looked calm, but Taemin could see the tension in her wings. This was the most important moment of her life. "Honored Council, Warlord Kratos, my fellow Dragonkin." Velrin's voice was strong and clear. "Everything Kratos showed you is true. I have eaten with humans. I have protected their children. I have sent our youth to learn from them." She paused. "And I would do it all again." Gasps echoed through the chamber. This was not a denial. This was open defiance. "For 300 years I have served our people through strength and conquest," Velrin continued. "I have never questioned our ways because I thought they were the only ways. But then something happened that changed everything." She gestured to Eris. "My daughter crashed on a human world. She was injured, dying. I watched from orbit, ready to destroy anyone who harmed her, and then I watched a human do something impossible." The holographic display changed. Now it showed Taemin finding the crashed pod, pulling Eris out, creating the makeshift stretcher, carrying her through rough terrain. "This human had nothing to gain," Velrin said quietly. "He risked his career, his safety, his resources to save a stranger. Not for money, not for power, simply because she needed help." The image changed to show Taemin working through nights treating Eris's wounds, Nari reading to her, the 2 girls becoming friends. "I expected exploitation," Velrin said. "I expected them to use my daughter as leverage, to demand payment or political favors, but they asked for nothing. They gave everything," Kratos interrupted. "So one human showed basic decency. That proves nothing except their desire for future favor." "Does it?" Velrin challenged. "Then explain this." The holographic display showed the attack by Vector's warriors, showed Taemin grabbing a plasma cutter and standing between the warriors and Eris, showed him being thrown across the room, bleeding and broken, but still trying to stand. The chamber fell completely silent. Even the hostile watchers were transfixed by the images. "This human," Velrin said, "fought trained Dragonkin warriors to protect my daughter. He faced certain death without hesitation. Why? Because that's what fathers do. That's what family means to humans." She turned to face the crowd. "I have studied dozens of species. I know their weaknesses, their fears, how to conquer them. But humans, I don't understand them. They're weak compared to us. Fragile, short-lived, yet they survive. They thrive. They build civilizations that last thousands of years despite having no natural weapons or armor. Because they're numerous," Kratos said dismissively. "Like insects." "No," Velrin said firmly. "Because they work together. Because they help each other even when there's no advantage to doing so. Because they form bonds that cross bloodlines and species." She looked at Taemin. "I've watched this human. He's not special by their standards. Just a regular engineer, a single father doing his best. But he represents something our culture lacks. The idea that strength isn't just about what you can destroy, it's about what you can build, what you can protect, what you can create. Counselor Thane leaned forward. These are pretty words, matriarch. But words don't conquer worlds. You're right, Velrun agreed. Which is why I invited the humans to speak for themselves. To show you what I've learned, Kratos laughed harshly. You want us to listen to humans lecture us about strength? This is even more insulting than I thought. Scared to hear what they have to say? Velrun challenged. The chamber erupted again. Kratos couldn't back down from that challenge without losing face. Finally, he waved his hand dismissively. Fine, let them speak. It will only prove my point, Velrun turned to Taman. The floor is yours. Taman's heart was pounding. He'd never spoken in front of more than a dozen people before, let alone thousands of hostile aliens. But he stepped forward, Nari still holding his hand. My name is Taman, he began. His voice sounded small in the vast chamber. I'm nobody important, just an engineer trying to raise my daughter. I don't know anything about politics or conquest or running empires. Then why are we listening to you? Someone shouted from the crowd. Because, Taman said, finding his courage. Sometimes the people who don't know about those things see things more clearly. He looked up at the thousands of dragonkin surrounding them. You see us as weak, small, inferior, and you're right about some of that. We're physically weaker than you. We live shorter lives. We can't fly or breathe fire or any of the amazing things you can do. At least he's honest, Kratos muttered. But here's what you don't see, Taman continued. You measure strength by individual power. We measure it by what we can accomplish together. You see us as separate beings. We see ourselves as connected, he gestured to Nari. My daughter is 6 years old. In your culture, she would already be training for war, learning to be independent and strong. In ours, she's learning to read, to make friends, to care about others. You'd call that soft. We call it building the foundation of a good person. Weak, Kratos said loudly. Your children are weak. Really? Taman challenged. When Vector's warriors attacked, my 6-year-old daughter saved us all. She didn't fight them with weapons. She ran through ventilation shafts in the dark, reached the security station and called for help. She used her small size and her intelligence to do what a warrior couldn't. Some of the dragonkin looked thoughtful at that. Taman continued. My wife died 3 years ago. I was broken. Couldn't work, couldn't think, could barely function. In your culture, I would have been seen as weak and discarded. In mine, my community held me up until I could stand again. They brought food, watched my daughter, gave me time to heal, not because I could pay them back. Just because I needed help. He met Velrun's eyes. That's what your matriarch learned from us, not weakness. The understanding that we're stronger together than apart. That protecting each other isn't shameful. It's the whole point. Beautiful sentiment, Kratos said mockingly. But sentiment doesn't win battles, doesn't it? Taman shot back. When your warriors attacked, I had no chance of winning. I'm not a fighter. I'm just a dad with a plasma cutter. But I fought anyway because my family needed me. That's not weakness. That's the strongest thing there is. Governor Minho stepped forward, his nervousness evident but his voice steady. If I may add some, the combat arena was ancient, carved directly into the mountain below the council chamber. Stone walls rose hundreds of feet high, with thousands of spectators filling the seats. At the center was a circular floor, scarred with centuries of battle marks. This was where dragonkin settled disputes that words could not resolve. Taman stood on one side of the arena, looking very small and very human. They'd given him light armor, the kind worn by dragonkin youth during training. It barely fit and offered little protection. In his hands he held a simple metal staff. It was the closest thing to a weapon he could actually use. On the opposite side, Kratos' champion emerged. His name was Gorith, and he was a legend among dragonkin warriors. His dark red scales were covered in battle scars. His wings were huge, designed for both flight and combat. He carried a massive sword that glowed with energy, capable of cutting through steel like paper. Gorith looked at Taman the way someone might look at an insect. There was no anger, no hatred, just the calm certainty of someone about to complete a simple task. In the viewing box, Nari was crying. Please don't make Daddy fight, she begged Velrun.
He'll die!
I know, Velrun said quietly, her voice filled with pain. She had tried everything to stop this. But dragonkin law was absolute. Once the challenge was accepted, it could not be withdrawn. Eris held Nari close, her own tears falling silently. Your father is the bravest person I've ever known. Brave people still die, Nari sobbed. Counselor Thane's voice echoed through the arena. The terms are clear. This is combat to submission or death. The human fights for Matriarch Velryn's honor. The warrior fights for Warlord Krythos' claim. Let the challenge begin, a horn sounded. Gorth moved immediately, his wings carrying him forward with incredible speed. Taman barely had time to dodge, rolling to the side as the massive sword crashed down where he'd been standing. The stone floor cracked from the impact. Taman scrambled to his feet, breathing hard. His ribs, still not fully healed from the last fight, already ached. This was going to be quick and brutal. Gorth turned almost leisurely. You're fast for a human. It won't matter. He charged again, sword swinging in wide arcs. Taman used his smaller size to stay inside the reach of the blade, jabbing with his staff at joints and gaps in Gorath's armor. His strikes had no real power behind them, but they were annoying. Pathetic, Gorath said. He backhanded Taman with his free hand, sending him flying across the arena. Taman hit the ground hard, the impact knocking the air from his lungs. The crowd was silent, watching the inevitable conclusion. A few younger dragonkin watched with sadness. The older ones watched with satisfaction, seeing proof that humans were indeed inferior. Taman forced himself to stand. Blood dripped from his mouth. His vision was blurry, but he raised his staff again. Why do you continue? Gorth asked, genuinely curious. You cannot win. You cannot even hurt me. This is pointless. Maybe, Taman gasped. But giving up would be worse. He charged forward, knowing it was useless. Gorth simply swatted him aside again, this time with enough force to break Taman's staff. Taman crashed into the arena wall, feeling something in his shoulder tear. In the viewing box, Nari buried her face in Eris's chest, unable to watch. Even some of the dragonkin spectators looked away. This wasn't a fight. It was an execution, but Taman stood up again. His left arm hung uselessly. His face was covered in blood. He could barely see, but he moved back to the center of the arena. Impressive endurance, Gorath admitted. But this ends now. He raised his sword for a finishing blow. But before he could strike, Taman did something unexpected. He dropped his broken weapon and started talking. You're right, Taman said, loud enough for everyone to hear. I can't beat you. I'm weaker, slower, less skilled. By every measure that matters to your culture, I've already lost. Gorath paused, confused by this tactic. But I'm still standing, Taman continued. Because this fight isn't about winning. It's about showing you something important. Something your culture has forgotten. And what is that? Krythos called out from his seat, amused by the dying human's speech. That strength isn't just physical power, Taman said. He looked up at the thousands of watching dragonkin. You measure everything by dominance, by conquest, by who can defeat who in combat. But that's not real strength. Real strength is standing up when you know you'll fall. It's protecting others even when it costs you everything. It's choosing kindness when cruelty would be easier. Weakness, Gorath said flatly, is it? Taman challenged. He pointed at Eris in the viewing box. When I found your princess broken and dying, I could have ignored her, could have reported it to security and gone home. That would have been safe. Smart, even. But I didn't. Because seeing someone suffer and doing nothing? That's the real weakness. He turned to face the council. You call humans inferior. Maybe we are by your standards. We can't fly or breathe fire. We can't tear through armor with our bare hands. But we have something you've lost. We remember that we're better together. That protecting each other isn't shameful. That love and compassion aren't weaknesses to overcome. They're strengths to embrace. Taman's voice grew stronger despite his injuries. I'm standing here broken and bleeding because I believe in something. I believe that Matriarch Velryn is right. I believe that your species could be so much more if you learn to cooperate instead of just conquer. I believe that my daughter deserves to grow up in a universe where different species help each other, instead of destroy each other. He looked directly at Gorath. So go ahead, finish this, kill me, but you won't kill what I represent. You won't stop change from coming, because there are others like me, other humans who will stand up. And there are dragonkin like Eris who see a better way. You can't defeat an idea with a sword. The arena was completely silent. Even Gorath seemed uncertain about how to respond. Then Eris stood up in the viewing box. Her voice rang out clear and strong. He's right, and I invoke blood right. Gasps echoed through the arena. Velryn grabbed her daughter's arm. Eris, no, do you understand what you're doing? Perfectly, Eris said. She climbed over the barrier and dropped into the arena. Her wings, still not fully healed, barely slowed her fall. She landed next to Taman and faced the council. I claim this human as blood family by ancient right. His fight is my fight. His honor is my honor, Counselor Thane leaned forward. Blood right hasn't been invoked in 300 years. It requires sacrifice, I know, Eris said. She extended one wing and drew a claw across it, drawing silver blood. Then she did the same to Taman's palm. They pressed the wounds together. By blood and choice, I claim Taman as kin. He is dragonkin now, whatever his body may appear. The crowd erupted in shocked voices. This was beyond controversial. This was revolutionary. She can't do that, Krithos shouted. The blood right is for our kind only. The law doesn't specify species, Eris said firmly. Only intention and sacrifice. I have given both. Counselor Thane consulted with the other council members. They argued in low voices while everyone waited. Finally, Thane spoke. The blood right is ancient and sacred. We cannot deny it without denying our own traditions. The claim is valid. Then the challenge is void, Eris said. You can't force a dragonkin to fight himself. That's our law. Krithos was on his feet, rage clear on his face. This is a mockery, a trick. She's spitting on centuries of tradition. No, a new voice said. Velrin stood and walked to the edge of the viewing box. She's using our traditions exactly as they were intended, to protect family, to honor sacrifice, to recognize courage wherever it appears. She spread her wings wide. My daughter has shown more wisdom in this moment than I have in 300 years. She's right. Taman is dragonkin, not by birth but by every measure that actually matters, by bravery, by honor, by willingness to sacrifice for others. Velrin jumped down into the arena, landing beside Eris and Taman. She faced the crowd. I ask you all to look at this human. Really look. He faced Gorath knowing he would lose. He endured pain and injury without surrendering. He did this not for glory or reward, but for others. Tell me how many of us would do the same? Younger dragonkin in the crowd started calling out agreement. More joined them. The wave of support grew. This is chaos, Krithos snarled. The old ways are being destroyed. The old ways, Velrin said firmly, led us to value conquest over cooperation, power over wisdom, domination over understanding. Maybe it's time for new ways. She turned to face the council. I don't claim that humans are superior to us. I claim they have things to teach us, things we've forgotten in our pursuit of power, and I claim that we're strong enough to learn those lessons without losing what makes us dragonkin. Counselor Thane looked around the arena, gauging the mood. The older dragonkin were opposed, but the younger ones were clearly interested. The future of their species was literally watching this moment unfold. The council will vote, Thane announced. All in favor of accepting Matriarch Velrin's defense and dismissing the charges? 3 council members raised their hands immediately. Thane made it 4. 2 voted against. The 7th, an ancient female named Sira, had not voted yet. All eyes turned to her. Sira looked at Taman, still standing despite his injuries. Looked at Eris, who had risked everything for him.